Hello and welcome to TransformedPod. You are with your co-host Heather today, and we have guest speaker on Stevie today. So thank you for
Hello,
joining with Stevie.
hello, no problem.
So today we're going to be talking about schizophrenia. So schizophrenia is a long-term mental health disorder that affects how a person thinks, feels and behaves. So it can cause people to experience things that aren't real. They can have trouble thinking clearly or struggle to relate to others. So schizophrenia can include hallucinations, so this is hearing or seeing things that aren't there, like hearing voices, delusions, and this is a strong false belief, like thinking someone is trying to harm you when they aren't. So this is a big part, that maybe you've heard about in the media and things like that. It also includes disorganized thinking, so this is difficulty organizing thoughts or speaking in a way that makes sense. Negative symptoms can include a lack of motivation, difficulty showing emotions, or withdrawing from social activities. It can include cognitive problems, so this is trouble with memory, focus, or problem solving. Now, we're going to talk about some misconceptions about schizophrenia because oftentimes the media can portray people with schizophrenia to be, very violent. Now, a lot of people with schizophrenia are actually not violent, and most people with schizophrenia are not dangerous. In fact, they're most likely to be victims of violence than actually hurt somebody else. So the media often gets this really wrong when talking about people with schizophrenia. Schizophrenia is also not the same as multiple personality, so people often confuse it with dissociative identity disorder, and this was formerly called multiple personality disorder. So schizophrenia involves distorted thinking and it's not split personalities. And people with schizophrenia can actually lead productive lives. So many individuals can manage symptoms with medication, therapy and support. So with the right treatment, people can work and have relationships and live fulfilling lives. And schizophrenia is also not caused by bad parenting. And this myth is really outdated. So while certain life stresses can trigger schizophrenia, it's not caused by how someone was raised. So what causes schizophrenia? So schizophrenia doesn't have a single cause. It usually develops due to a mix of genetic, biological and environmental factors. So this is such as, if someone has a close family member with schizophrenia, they are at a higher risk of developing it. But many people with no family history can still get it. The brain chemistry and structure, people with schizophrenia often have differences in brain chemicals like dopamine and in the actual brain structure. Now, environmental factors. So before birth, problems during pregnancy like exposure to viruses or malnutrition, this can increase the risk. And there's also life stresses. So this can be, trauma that can trigger schizophrenia in people who were already at risk. Now, we're going to talk about drug use, and the use of certain drugs like cannabis during teenage years or early adulthood can increase the risk of schizophrenia, especially for those that were already vulnerable to it. So there's different ways to treat schizophrenia. So there's medication, and this is antipsychotic medications, and this can help reduce hallucinations and delusions. And then we have things like therapy, CBT, which is cognitive behavioural therapy, and this can help people manage symptoms to cope with the daily challenges that they face. Now, social skills training and family therapy and vocational programs can also help people lead independent and fulfilling lives. So that's just a little bit of a background on schizophrenia. So we're going to talk to Stevie now and listen to his experiences that he's had with schizophrenia. So Stevie, can you tell us when you were first diagnosed with schizophrenia and how that came about?
So I was diagnosed. I think it was like my early 20s, and I showed signs of hallucinations, stuff like that. So basically, one of my hallucinations was that I had books in my room and I had like tops and stuff that had faces on it, and I was convinced that the faces on the books, on the t-shirts and stuff were actually looking at me, and there was cameras in my bedroom. Yeah, I've destroyed my bedroom multiple times looking for cameras. Yeah, it was a whole thing.
So you really had that feeling, that something was watching you all of the time.
Yeah.
So can you remember how you first felt when you realised that something was wrong?
I don't think I fully realised that something was wrong. It wasn't until I was living with my, oh, well, yeah, I was living with my mum, and she had mentioned it to her friend who was a mental health nurse, and she was like, "Okay, that is like quite serious." I didn't really think anything of it, and then she kind of pulled some strings and got us an interview with a crisis team. And then after that, I was admitted to. I wasn't admitted, but I was referred to the community mental health team.
And did they, when you got your diagnosis, did they speak to you about, what was the cause of your schizophrenia or anything like that?
It was originally because obviously I had a history with drug and alcohol abuse. So originally it was actually diagnosed as drug-induced psychosis, and then after a while, after I had multiple follow-up appointments, I eventually got a diagnosis of schizoaffective disorder, and then later on down the line, I got the schizophrenia title.
So you mentioned that drugs played a role in your experience with schizophrenia. So what drugs was this that you played the role?
I think I've been told by multiple people that it was mainly cannabis. However, I was on quite a lot of drugs. Although, like, my friends didn't even know that I was on. It was like a secret kind of addiction. I wasn't addicted. I was just really dependent. But no one knew that I was on these drugs. My mum didn't know. My friends didn't know. I kept it like really hush hush. So obviously when I had to say to everyone, "Oh yeah, this is this is what I've been doing," it wasn't a very good moment.
I could imagine that would have been hard for you. So do you feel like was the drugs that triggered your symptoms, or do you think it was more complicated than that?
So I feel like it was always going to be laying dormant in us. But I also have been told by professionals that it was to do with the THC levels in cannabis. And I have obviously I went to university, studied forensic psychology, and I have obviously read a lot of research saying that the higher the THC potency, the more damaging it is to the brain structure and how it can affect like mental health diagnoses and psychosis and stuff like that. So I do truly believe that it was a mix. I feel like it was a mixture of genetics and environmental factors. I think it was genetics. It was probably already in us. I've got a long history of familial mental health disorders, and I think the THC has probably just like lighted it up, kind of
Yeah,
thing.
so it's not that sort of one single thing.
Yeah,
How do you think cannabis affected you before you were diagnosed?
like how it interacted with
Yeah,
me.
like how did you, when you were, using cannabis?
It was great. It was good. Like I kind of
So do you feel that you didn't sort of get any side effects while you were using it? It was more so like later on.
yeah. So obviously later on down the line, it was quite. What was that?
He's laughing because I laughed when he said cannabis was great. So now, because he's
Uh,
looking at my
I've
face,
got the giggles.
he's took the giggles there. But
Right, go on.
it is quite a big thing, and a lot of people do use cannabis and enjoy cannabis, and they
It,
don't really understand the side effects that cannabis can have, especially in those early stages, especially in childhood, where this can make people the most vulnerable. Do you think there was any particular point where cannabis use made a noticeable impact on your mental health or anything?
I think obviously it was around the time that I was really struggling mentally anyway with depression, anxiety, stuff like that. So I took it to like kind of ease them symptoms. So after a little while, it started to become kind of like, it was like a crutch. So eventually I started to think I was getting paranoid. It was the paranoia was the main thing. Like I still am very paranoid, and obviously we'll get into it and stuff, but the paranoia is the bit that I thought, oh, this is like kind of not what I used to be like, and that's when I kind of thought it was probably damaging my mental health.
Do you feel that there was enough awareness when you were using drugs and things like that around schizophrenia and the impact that drugs could possibly have on, the causing sort of that?
I don't think so. I think, you're taught in school, like, drugs are bad, but they don't go into the details of everything that can actually go wrong. Like, mental health wise, like, it can really destroy literally your whole life. It took me about 8 or 9 years to get back on my feet after I had my breakdown, and I think if I had been told that prior to using it, I feel like there would have been some sort of like I would have been hesitant to actually get into this and get kind of involved in that like kind of lifestyle, and I don't think I would have eventually got onto it, but yeah, I don't think I would have used it the way I used it. I was using it quite heavily.
Now you have a degree in forensic psychology now, so you're quite well knowledgeable around like this area and things. But at the time, were you surprised that drugs could be an impact on the development of schizophrenia?
What, during university?
No, beforehand, when you had your diagnosis of
Oh no, I
schizophrenia, because
didn't.
obviously you didn't have a background in psychology
No, I
then.
didn't. I was honestly, I had never heard the term drug-induced psychosis. I'd never heard anything to do with THC levels. I had never learned any of it. I didn't know any kind of how it would interact eventually with my brain and the chemicals within it, and it was just I was totally oblivious. Yeah.
What would you say to young people who might use cannabis now without realising the potential mental health risks that it can have?
I would honestly say I think it's a lot to do with kids taking drugs now is the like kind of stigma of not taking drugs.
Yeah, it's
Like,
that peer pressure.
yeah, it's like, you're not doing this, you're not doing that. Like, why are you not doing that? Like, honestly, be strong and just be your own person and say, listen, I'm not about to do that. I'm not about to risk my mental health, to risk my prospects of forwarding a life for myself, because you will get stalled at a point in your life that you think there's no way back. I did, and it was really damaging to my mental health to think, oh well, where do I go from here? So I would definitely say think about it, and I would probably say tell someone like an adult, like say, listen, I need advice. This is what's going on. I wish I had done that,
Yeah.
and I know that the adults in my life would have said, stay away from it, like absolutely stay away from it, and I would think that adults in other people's kids' lives would say the same thing, hopefully.
Yeah, it's that raising awareness, isn't it, of how it
Yeah.
can actually impact it, especially, teenagers and their developing brain will know that the risks imposed, even alcohol use
Yeah.
on the developing brain
Yeah.
with teenagers. So you've had a diagnosis of schizophrenia now for over 10 years. Now, would you say the first part was the hardest point of having schizophrenia? Would you say it's been battled all the way through? Is there any sort of parts that stick out for you?
I think prior to the diagnosis and just after the diagnosis, well, a few years after, like post diagnosis, was the worst. It was, I was very close to either do it. Like I was self harming at the time as well, and I had multiple attempts on my life. Um, so that was definitely the hardest point in it because I just didn't know what to do. I didn't see any way out.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I was about 26, like 25, 26, maybe 27, that I thought, right, okay, I want to do something with my life. And I obviously joined university as a mature student, and like just I've never looked back. But the years prior to that were very, very much dark times, dark times.
Do you still feel that it's a struggle living with schizophrenia now, or do you find it easier to navigate?
It doesn't play a role in my life anymore. I'm on medication. I've tried therapy. Therapy, it worked for a lot of people, like a lot of people, but it's not for everyone. Therapy isn't a blanket therapy. Like it's not a blanket thing where it's gonna benefit everyone in life.
Yeah.
It can benefit certain people, and it didn't benefit me. So I've just kind of persevered with it, got on medication. I've tried to kind of. Someone told me years ago that you need to find your pleasure pathways, and a pleasure pathway is doing something consistently and consistently. Like imagine a garden path, and if you don't go down it often enough, it gets overgrown. It gets all horrible and stuff. But if you go down that path every day, then it'll look lovely. And that is the same with your life. Like, do pleasure pathways, do something that brings you joy every day,
Yeah.
and eventually you will find a way out. But it takes perseverance.
So did you take any drugs after finding out about this diagnosis and that caused you that? Was it something that you were still doing,
No,
or was that
no.
a cut-off point for you?
That was the cut-off point was actually before my diagnosis. I hadn't smoked anything. I hadn't done anything for a few months, maybe a year. Um, and after I got diagnosis, I didn't touch anything ever again. Yeah, I don't. You know, it's complicated because I do think this is getting totally off topic, but this is about legalization. Legalization, I think, people say, we're doing this, we're doing that, but it's not good, it's not good. But if we were to regulate cannabis in this country and reduce the THC level, I think that would be great. Um, I think, it's just I didn't take it after, but if I knew it was safe and if I knew it wasn't going to cause anything further, then I would have.
Yeah.
But it was just sheer panic of if I take something, then like what can happen? Do you know what I mean? But like, yeah, I think if it's regulated, I think probably I would have. Yeah.
So you've obviously said that the medication has played like a massive part in sort of, benefiting you and how you can sort of navigate life now with schizophrenia. Was there any other lifestyle sort of changes or routines that have been like helping you manage your mental health?
I think getting into like nature and stuff I go out every day with my dog on long walks. That brings just anything that brings you pleasure, anything that gives you a reason to get up in the morning is something that needs to be like become a habit.
Yeah.
I think even if you like to go out in the car and go food shopping or do anything that brings you pleasure and brings you excitement or anything like that, I would definitely recommend like exercise. And I know I have tried exercise in the past, and it has when I do it, it's endorphins, it's everything like that. So even like I'm a bigger person, but I still like to exercise. Yeah, exercise is great because it releases so much endorphins into your brain and stuff. It gets you kind of moving. It's good for your physical health. It's good for your mental health. So yeah, even walking. But yeah, bringing every day doing something that you really enjoy and you really think that can benefit you in the long run, then that'd be perfect.
I'm a big advocate for sort of like exercise for mental health, even just
Yes.
walking and things. I
Mm-hmm.
know, if I'm having a bad day, 10 minutes walking out the door, even if I don't want to go out after 10 minutes of walking,
You
I
feel
just
great, don't
feel
you?
great
You do.
afterwards. So at the beginning, we touched upon like your delusions and things
Yes.
like that. So did you just have those at the very beginning, or has medication stopped them? Is there anything in particular that you want to discuss around your delusions?
Well, my delusions were mainly paranoid delusions. I said before, like obviously when I was under the influence of cannabis, I was very paranoid, and that continued um, into my diagnosis. I've had nights where I've been looking out the window and I've seen people staring back at us. Obviously, there were hallucinations. I didn't know that. It seems like it's reality, it
Yeah.
doesn't seem like it's, oh, I'm just thinking that. It's you truly believing that those people outside that window are going to kill you. I've had, things like I've been influenced also by media in my hallucinations because in the early days, I don't know if anyone's watched the Truman Show,
Oh
the
yeah.
movie, the movie. I was convinced that my life was a television show and that everyone was watching me on some secret TV channel, and that people were playing tricks on me, and yeah, the delusions were mainly, if you look at everything that I've said, it is very paranoia based.
It must be really frightening though
It
in those
is.
moments. I could imagine that'd
Oh,
be very scary.
like it's yeah, it's very frightening. I had to move back home obviously because I couldn't cope living alone.
How did you feel when you were having these delusions and seeing people watching you and things like that, and then somebody's telling you that's not real, that's not happening, and it's all in your
It's
sort of head, sort
it's
of
like no,
thing?
like I can't comprehend why somebody would lie to us and say that, like basically calling us crazy. Um, when I thought I was completely rational, like these people are coming to get us, they're going to kill us, they're going to take us away, they're going to kill us. And then when you have someone contradicting that, and it's like, no, like it feels like a lot of urgency. Like, no, 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 you don't understand. Like, this is really happening, and it's hard to get through to someone that what I'm believing is my truth.
Yeah, it's your reality.
You also get a little bit of anger as well. You think, why aren't you taking this seriously? Like, I'm fighting for my life, and you're saying that I'm crazy. Like, why are you not like heeding that advice and being like, okay, let's get you to safety, whatever. But eventually, each time I've had a psychosis, my mum has always been able to bring us out of it.
Yeah.
Um, Honestly, without that support, I don't think I would probably be here.
Can you remember the first time? Obviously, we've just been discussing there, somebody telling you it's not real and it was making you feel angry and why aren't you believing us? Can you remember the first time when you've actually thought, oh my God, like they are telling the truth and this is actually all
Oh
in my
yeah,
head, it's not real?
that would have been like my first psychosis. Like it would have been the books. If you remember
Yeah.
what I was saying about the books with the faces, it was that. But that one took a few weeks to convince me that it wasn't real. Um, I had ripped wallpaper off my bedroom walls, looking for cameras. I had destroyed my bed looking for cameras. I had destroyed electronics looking for microphones and cameras and stuff like that. Like it was a serious thing. And then obviously I had this group of people saying that you're wrong. Essentially, this is not what's going on. And I can't actually. But after you come out of a psychosis, it's very hard to remember what just happened.
Yeah.
Obviously, for me, with my first psychosis, it was a couple of weeks, so it was very much a blur. But I remember once I felt like, oh, you know what, these may be telling the truth. Um, it was a lot of relief. I remember I was in floods of tears because I was like, well, what's wrong with it? After you come out of it, you're like, what's wrong with it? And why am I thinking this way? Why am I like this?
Yeah.
But after that, like every time I've been brought up for psychosis, it's been the same kind of feeling, like a relief feeling and tears and like just not like overwhelming happiness because I mean what you've just been through is quite traumatic, but a sense of like relief that okay I'm back and I'm more centered.
Yeah. And how long would these psychosis last?
They can last from hours to weeks. The longest one obviously was the one with the books and the faces, which was I feel like that was maybe a month or two.
Yeah, it must have been really frightening
Yeah,
for that whole period of time. And were you at home the whole time when you were dealing with this
yeah.
with your mum?
So I like my mum was convinced that I'm not getting sectioned. He's definitely not getting sectioned. Like she made it happen that I didn't get sectioned, and I'm really thankful that she did because looking back, it would have marked me
Yeah.
like from university for jobs stuff like that. It would have marked as it would have been on my record forever.
But this is a shame though, because this is that stigma
Yes,
again
yes,
that if you are sectioned because of mental health, it
it
then could
stays.
affect whether you are able to get a
Yes,
job and
yeah.
things like that. And this needs to
It
change.
does. It
It
absolutely does.
needs to
I completely
change.
agree with you, and I'd never really thought about it like that. Having a section on your medical records would. It is. It is. It feeds into that stigma.
Yeah, because I mean, how many years has it been since your last psychosis?
Since my last psychosis, like 5 or 6 year.
So you've had 5 or 6 years, where you are navigating life, living with schizophrenia,
Yeah,
and yet if you go, for a job and you've been sectioned, you feel that
yeah,
potentially
yeah.
impact that.
Especially if it's a healthcare job, because if I think in any job really, if you have been sectioned, it's gonna be negative. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? The employers are gonna look at it and think, oh well, what could happen at work? What could he do to the patients or the clients or the service users what can happen, but you don't need to think like that. Like I've been stable now for years. But like you say, that if I had got section, that would have still been on my medical
Yeah.
records. I think it needs to change. And again, with the stigma, like that does feed into the stigma of, oh my god, he's being sectioned, he's being sectioned. What can we do with him? Like, I'm not. I'm not some kind of monster, and I'm not some kind of fragile person that needs to be wrapped in cotton wool. I'm just a person that has medical diagnosis. It's like having like a broken leg.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
Well, exactly. Sometimes, these things they can't be seen, but they're there,
Yes.
but it doesn't mean anything. So when you were saying that, you felt like if you went to a potential employer, they might think, well, what are they going to do to someone? Have you ever been violent within your schizophrenia psychosis,
I've
or do you think?
never ever been violent, not even to the people that were trying to bring us out of it. I've raised my voice, probably,
Yeah.
but I would never, I couldn't ever be aggressive. And I think that is the same for me in a psychosis. I
Yeah.
think, you know, fine if you're the temperament to kind of, if you're a domestic violence perpetrator, if you're a anything like that,
If you have a predisposition
yeah,
for violence.
yeah, for violence, yeah, then that's fair enough. But a lot of people do not who
Yeah.
have psychosis, and they've never touched anyone in their life, or they've never hurt anyone, or been violent with anyone ever, with either in or out of psychosis. So no, I've never been violent. I don't think I probably would ever be violent in psychosis.
How does it make you feel when the media portray people with schizophrenia as violent?
It's kind of like they don't know what they're doing is wrong because they just think, oh well, this characteristic of schizophrenia is like this, beast that like just hunts people and kills them, and it's not true. Like you said at the top of the podcast, we are more likely to be victims of crime rather
Yeah.
than to perpetrate crime. And that's statistically proven. Like it's in the data. So I think that thing in media that is like, oh, he's a schizophrenic, like, oh, be careful, like that needs to change. And I welcome anyone who is involved in media and stuff to flip it on its head and be like, actually, and I have seen it in a few like kind of shows
Yeah.
where they have said like, oh, schizophrenics are more likely to be victims than perpetrators, and that is really what fresh, like it's like a breath of fresh air, because it's like it's not sticking to the norm of this big bad schizophrenic villain.
Yeah. Because there is, like, obviously, there is a few cases, that's gone into the media where somebody with schizophrenia, has committed like a crime, and it maybe have been a violent crime. And they really focus on the schizophrenia, yet
Yeah.
there's crimes every day committed by people that haven't got schizophrenia,
Yeah.
but they kind of sort of hold on to that, so it gives it that, misconception and stigma. Have you faced any stigma around your diagnosis, do you feel, from meeting people, friends,
I
anybody?
don't really tell many people that I've got schizophrenia. Obviously, I told you and our other friends in uni, but that was after I had like kind of built up a trust.
Yeah.
Um, but no, I've never really dealt with. I don't think I've ever dealt with stigma. I don't think. But
And do you feel you don't tell them in
oh
case
yeah,
you have that
yeah,
stigma?
yeah. That is it is because of the stigma are surrounding schizophrenic people that I haven't told, like people in my life that are in my life, but I haven't told them that part of me because I just don't trust them. But so yeah.
So how do you explain your condition to people who don't understand schizophrenia, like friends or family members? How do you explain to them what schizophrenia is when you are telling somebody that you have schizophrenia?
I just say I've got schizophrenia, and then I kind of you can see on the faces that they're kind of processing this thing of like, oh well, is he violent? Is he gonna like kill us, or like, like these stupid things that run through your head, like, and then that also triggers my paranoia. You know what I mean? So I'm like, oh my god, what did they think? What did they think of this? Like, that like kind of not self hatred, but like self doubt about
Yeah.
myself and how like kind of likable I am because of my condition. But yeah, like it's hard to explain to people, but I just say it how it is, and then if they want to ask follow up questions, I'm absolutely fine with that. Because if you're in a position where I'm telling you about my condition, then I trust you, and I trust you to kind of ask questions that are like, anything you want to know that about it. I'm fine. I'm fine answering any question that people have about it. Like, as long as I ask respectfully.
Yeah. So, what are some of the things that make your days better on a difficult day with schizophrenia?
Me dog, literally,
Your
me
dog.
dog, me dog.
Yeah.
Um, Cuddled off me dog. Watching like do you know like guilty pleasure shows.
Yeah.
Like I'm obsessed with Law and Order Special Victims Unit at the minute, so I just like rewatch like comfort shows.
Yes,
Yeah,
that sort of like
and just
little,
cuddle with me dog on the
the
city.
things that you do to sort of self-love and
Yes.
pamper yourself and look after
Yeah.
yourself. So when you're living with schizophrenia, do you feel that, you have to balance that with maintaining relationships or friendships or work or hobbies, or do you feel the medication has a good hold on that so you don't feel like it's a balancing act?
I don't think it is hard for me to like kind of I put me relationships first, like my friendships, my family, anything other than that. Like I have a hierarchical system. Like friends and family are first, like work comes second, like everything else after that. But like I have to take care of those things first before I
Yeah.
can do anything else. Um. So yeah, I think like juggling everything is hard and it takes a lot of effort. But it's just something you have to do. And I do think medication does play a big impact. It kind of forces me to kind of list my priorities and kind of get them sorted because it puts me in a clearer state of mind.
So do you feel that the medication has made a massive difference?
Oh yeah, without the medication, I would still be having hallucinations. I would still be hearing things, seeing things. It's the medication has changed my life. Like it's literally like a game changer, and it took a while to get it to the right dosage.
Yeah.
Um, but after that, it's been perfect. I'm on a stable dose now. I have come down a lot in my dosage, and I've been stable for now for years and years
So
on
you
the same dose.
So you feel like that. So when you first were given medication, obviously you said that had to give you the right dosage. Were you still having hallucinations and things while they were getting the dosage right?
Yeah, so I was still having hallucinations, um, quite intensely. I think that was the one that I mentioned at the top of this podcast, the faces book thing. That was the main psychosis I was having at the time. That continued into getting my medication kind of upped and kind of steadied, and then obviously the therapy came later.
So do you feel like the medication made it worse for a little bit and then got better as it was thinking, or was it like that anyway and then the medication just
It
started
was
to
like that
really?
anyway, yeah. And
Yeah.
the medication just kind of like just it fizzled out, and it was like, oh, okay, like I'm thinking clearly. I am back on the kind of path to kind of being like normal again.
Is there anything you wish you knew earlier about schizophrenia that would have made it easier for you,
Um,
in the early
I
stages?
don't know. I think probably just trying to cope with it. Like I think I was very scared in the beginning time of, oh my god, I'm gonna get it was the main thing was sectioned. So if I was to look back and think, oh my god, like I'm gonna get sectioned, like I would look back now and think, okay, just chill. Like you're gonna go through it, but you're gonna come out of the other side healthier,
Yeah.
happier, and stronger. Um, and the medication is perfect in my instances, and obviously, like I said, the therapy didn't really take, but yeah, it was good.
What advice would you give to somebody that is maybe just been diagnosed with schizophrenia now, or that in the early stages, or that's just still struggling with living with schizophrenia?
Living with schizophrenia is it's hard, and you kind of have to adapt a lot. Like society's expectations of schizophrenics, again, like the stigma is violent, blah blah blah. But you don't have to be influenced by that. I mean, when I say influence, I don't mean, oh, I'm influenced to kill someone. Don't be influenced by the negativity. Be your own positive person. Look for every cloud, every silver lining. and don't look so negatively upon yourself because of media and society's view of you and your label. Um, so that would be the one that I would tell myself way back
Yeah.
years ago. But also, I would tell someone that was just getting diagnosed, like it is hard, but there is so much reluctancy to take medication because, and I don't know why, but there is a lot of reluctancy to take meds. And honestly, I would say to anyone that is in that frame of mind of, do I take meds or do I just like kind of road dog it? Like, just take the meds. Like, it makes your life so much more livable.
Yeah.
And it transforms your whole life. So anyone diagnosed just now or going through it, that would be my advice, to just like look positively on everything. And obviously, the psychoses are not, are not easy, but you're you, and that's it. There's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
You just kind of have to live it.
To live with it. Now, you said earlier that your mum was a huge support in this. What would you say to somebody that is maybe listening to this podcast and they are wanting to support somebody around them that has schizophrenia? What would you advise
I
them
would
with
say
that?
be very patient, because that person, if they are having a psychosis, are not going to be receptive to you saying, "Oh, what you doing? Like, it's fine." You repeating back to them like, "Oh, it's not. It's you're just like blowing things out of proportion." Blah blah blah. I would say be patient and be very kind of accepting and kind of loving. Say to them like, "I'm here." Like, reassurance is perfect. Like, reassuring someone when they're in the middle of a psychosis is like therapy to them. It's like, they know that you're there at any given time to talk to sound off at. Yeah, reassurance is a big thing. Like, you're gonna be fine. Just sit with them. Just, obviously, I would get rid of anything that is sharp instruments, knives, even pills. Not for anyone else's safety, but for theirs. Just because obviously when I was going through my psychosis, it was a lot of like self harm, suicide, stuff like that. I would definitely advise safety precautions. Um, and just sitting with them, sit through with it, sit through it with them, and just offer as much support as you can, and don't dismiss them, like saying, "Oh, like, it's typical," or anything that's dismissive. Always accept that that person really, really, in their heart of hearts, truly believes their psychosis. Don't try and belittle it, or like just knock it away with some sort of like, "Oh, he's being dramatic," or whatever.
So when you're saying that, right? So say if somebody's having a psychosis episode and they are saying there's this person there watching me or something, and obviously the other person knows that person's not there.
Yeah.
Should you be saying there's nobody there, or should you be sitting back saying I'm with you right now. It's okay with
Yeah, I would, reassurance again. I would say reassurance, but also if you feel comfortable and if you think the other person is receptive to you saying or approaching the subject of, there's no one there, then I would approach that. It's not a blanket thing. It's
Yeah.
like, it's to generalize something. It is hard, but and the person who was given support for that person in a psychosis will know their person
Yeah.
a lot better than anyone else. So whatever you think is necessary, I would do. It's, in my case, I was receptive sometimes to someone saying, this is not real. You're just a little bit unwell. But in other cases, I wasn't,
Yeah.
and I would react like angrily, or like I would like shout and like insist and insist and insist. That gets you nowhere. So like a change of tactics is needed
Yeah.
then. But if you feel like you can approach that subject of, maybe that person isn't really there, or maybe what you're seeing is not actually the true representation of what is there,
Yeah.
then I would approach it with a little bit of care.
Because it's a very complex thing to
Yes.
navigate, and because
Yeah.
everybody is so different, have different experiences. So what one person have, so it is important, to
Yeah.
be looking at that sort of thing. So just to end it, so how do you see your future and what are your hopes for managing schizophrenia for the long term?
honestly, my future, like if I look back, say if I go back 15 years, my future, me right now is a dream.
Yeah.
Like I want to tell people with schizophrenia that it does get better. Um, I mean, I've went to college to complete an access to HE course, and then I went on to to access higher education. I've went, I've got a job. It everything you can do, anything you set your mind to, and my future right now looks really rosy. Honestly, I really must admit that my future does look good. And to admit that right now is like kind of jarring because back then I would never have thought I would even make it.
Yeah.
To hear like I'm 32 now, and back then I would never think I would even meet my 30s.
Yeah.
Like so, looking forward, yeah, I'm content, and I want people to know that. So, like even if you're suicidal without psychosis or schizophrenia, even if you're struggling with mental health, or if you're just struggling with anxiety or whatever, there is there is something waiting for you across. You know, just 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 go with it, but there will be a light at the end of the tunnel. There will be someone there with you, and meeting all the people that I've met in the 10 years that well, yeah, 10 years that I've been diagnosed. Like, there's so many people that you haven't met yet that will
Yeah.
improve your life so much. Every person I've met in my life since then has served a purpose. And I might not speak or whatever, but that them people served a purpose in my life. Um, so if you are a bit down, a bit depressed, don't don't solve it with a permanent solution to a temporary problem. This feeling that you have is temporary. What you want to do is a permanent solution, and you can't reverse it. That is the takeaway that I want people to know from this.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today,
Thank
Stevie. It's
you.
been so informative. I'm going to leave that there. If you would like to check out our website at Transformed Life Coaching. We also have our TikTok and Instagram with links in the bio. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.